Hi, welcome to my latest video. Today I'm going to be looking at fitting this light bar to the roof of my Freelander 2 in place of those 4 spotlights. So this light bar is a 42-inch light bar. It's the type that have the mounting bolts at each end rather than on brackets along the back. What I'm going to do is design some brackets that actually come out from these feet on my factory roof rails here. So if I just pull off this cover, you'll be able to see how I attached these spotlights. These are LED sort of 7-inch spotlights. I've got 4 of those now. This one here is okay, but you can see some of them are starting to get a bit steamed up. They've got moisture that's getting in. I've had these fitted for a couple of years now. They're very, very good. Previous to that, I actually had a 36-inch light bar bolted to this piece of angle aluminium here that you can see. But that also succumbed to the elements and started steaming up and eventually stopped working completely. So I got rid of that. I fitted these spotlights. But I now feel the time is right to go back to a light bar, but the 42-inch light bar won't fit between the roof rail feet here on this. So what I'm going to do is undo this bolt here that I used to attach the angle aluminium to the roof rail feet. So I'll undo this. There's a nylock nut underneath there. This and the lights and the cabling for these lights will completely go, and then what I want is to have this long 42-inch light bar mounted across the front of the roof, just above the roof, sort of about here, going across between some brackets that I want to make that will attach behind here and come up to here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use the 3D printer to get the design of the brackets right, and then in order to make the brackets stronger, I will then create a mold, a silicone mold from the 3D printed item, and then cast a replica in hard black rigid polyurethane, which will be a lot stronger than the 3D printed PLA. Okay, so let's have a look at the 3D design now, and I'll show you what I've come up with. So here we can see a few of the first prototype brackets that I designed and printed on the 3D printer. The design was slowly improved by trial and error. After many, many prototypes, I ended up with the bracket that you can see here in blue. And this was very, very close to what we needed. Here you can see the design that I ended up with. We've got some reinforcing pieces here just to strengthen it. There's a bit of a chamfer here to align this foot part with the underside of the roof rail foot. This hole is really just cosmetic. It just uses a little bit less material. And then we've got this kind of honeycomb effect here, which again is cosmetic. I think it looks quite nice. So this face here points outwards. This will be on the end of the light bar, and this is the surface that you'll see with a bolt through a hole here. The other side is not patterned, because that will be the underside when it's 3D printed. That will also be the face that goes against the end of the light bar. So there's no point really in putting a pattern on this end, because you won't be able to see it when it's fitted. This shape will be printed like this, flat onto the build plate of the 3D printer with a support structure underneath here. So what I'm going to do now is print out one of these and offer it up to the car and see what it looks like. So here is the 3D printed prototype. What I'm going to do is just remove this foot from, or foot cover from the end of the factory roof rails. Notice this is quite corroded here. That's where the steel has reacted with the aluminium casting. Aluminium and steel don't get on. Makes the steel rust a lot quicker. Right, so there is the prototype bracket in position. So we can see that the slope here actually changes very slightly as it slopes down. So that's why I've got this slight change of shape there. That fits in quite nicely there. And then that will go across to the other bracket on the other side, and the light bar will mount into this hole here. So what I need to do is to drill a couple of holes here and here into this aluminium through into this 3D printed part. I didn't want to print this with holes already there, because then it would be difficult to get these in exactly the right position. So if I drill some holes here first, and then I can then sort of mark up where the holes are, and then drill through into this, and then put some bolts through to hold that in position. And then I'll do the one on the other side, and we'll see if the gap in between this part here. So the gap needs to be 106 centimeters. Okay, so that is the total length of the 42-inch light bar, including the small threaded raised bits at the ends. Okay, so what I'll do, get this one fitted in, and then we can see if the spacing is correct. Okay, I'm going to start off with a very small drill. It's about 3mm drill, and I've just marked up two little marks here. So we've got the first one here is 2 centimeters up from this point here, this little kind of corner point. So 2 centimeters up from there, and the other one is 5 centimeters up. The distance out from this little bit here to the marks there is about 8mm. Let's just check that. So yeah, about 8mm. Okay. Now there are no holes in the brackets yet, so it doesn't really matter how accurate I am with these holes here, because I'm just going to drill these and then drill through the bracket. However, it would be nice to get the holes in the same position on the other side, so that if I do end up making the brackets with the holes already in, then I can use these as a guide, and then I know that the other ones will fit. Put this piece of wood here because it's very, very easy to drill through, and for the drill to carry on and scrape up the roof. that actually happened to me when I was drilling out these, so this time I thought I'd be careful and put a piece of wood there. Right, so let's get the drill and drill the first hole. See now why I put that piece of wood underneath there. It's far too easy for the drill to run through the hole and scratch the paintwork on the roof. So definitely a good idea to put something like that underneath. Okay, so that's both holes now 3mm. I'm going to go up gradually in the drill sizes up to 6.5mm so that I can put an M6 bolt through each hole. I think that should be strong enough. I don't think we need to go to M8. That sounds a little bit too large. 2 M6 should be more than enough. Okay. That's both holes drilled. Just need to vacuum up all these filings and then I will drill through into the bracket and put 2 bolts in. Okay, so what I've done now is by holding the bracket up and then carefully just using a drill to mark through the holes onto the PLA. We can then see the 2 marks there, so I can drill those out now. Okay, so I've drilled that out now. Made a bit of a mess of the PLA, but don't worry, this is just a prototype low density print. This is really just to see if it'll actually fit and has the right spacing between the brackets for the light bar. So I'm not too worried about destroying this one in the process. The one that I use to make the mould will be a different one. It'll be much higher quality print. So okay, so I'm just going to put some short M6 bolts through this and through the roof rail foot and just actually bolt the bracket in position. Okay, just see what it looks like and see if it's actually in the right place for the light bar to fit between them. Okay, so I've just put some M6 bolts through the holes into the plastic bracket. I don't need to tighten these right up at the moment. This is purely a location test to check the span between these holes here. Okay, so that's good enough to hold that in position. What I'm going to do now is drill and fit the other bracket on the other side, and then I will offer up the light bar and see what it looks like. Okay, so I fitted the other bracket on the other side, and now by using a towel to protect the roof of the car, I'm just going to manoeuvre this into position. There we go. Let's move this wire out of the way. Now, I'm not actually sure if that wire's going in up here. I wonder if that's actually meant to be underneath. I'll have to read up, and I don't think it actually came with any instructions at all, this. So yeah, that might need putting on the other side. I really want it on this side though, because that's where the wiring is for the other roof lights. Okay, there is a grommet in there, so I think that can actually mount that way up quite safely without water going in. But the good news is the bracket spacing is spot on. There's a little bit of a slight contact there at the back of the light hitting the bracket. But that's actually okay. I think those holes there look, they're quite small. Might be M6, maybe even M5. What I'll do is I'll dig out the bolts that came with the light bar and put them in, and we'll just kind of see what that looks like and see what sort of clearance we've got underneath. It's going to be pretty tight because this towel's not that thick and that's resting on the towel. Okay, probably going to be, yeah, up there, so probably about 1, maybe 2 centimetres below the light bar. I don't really want a very narrow, thin gap underneath because then you can get a whistling noise. I had that previously between the old light bar and the angle aluminium. There was a gap of about 3mm and above about 30 miles an hour. There was a very loud whistling sound. I had to seal the gap up in the end with some tape. But okay, right. I think what I'll do is put some nuts underneath these just to hold these a bit firmer. I'll put those bolts in, and then that'll allow me to take the towel out and step back and see what it looks like. I've tightened these up a bit, and I'll put an M6 bolt in there. Okay, so that is the light bar fitted roughly into position. So we can see that it can be adjusted to the angle required to illuminate the right part of the road ahead. So a couple of things here. I couldn't find the bolts that came with this, so I've used another M6 bolt, which is a bit too long. I don't want to screw this too far in because it will end up getting into the actual LEDs and electronics inside. So I do need to find the right bolts. Angle wise, this all looks fairly good. This could actually do with coming in a little bit. Not sure if that's got enough play in it to, that actually is probably, yeah, I'll probably alter the design slightly, very slightly. Just bring each of these, just bring this in by about 3mm. Clearance wise, it's actually quite a bit higher up than I thought it would be. So let's see what that looks like. Now, let's angle that. Oh, there we go. So, that's roughly what it will look like. Obviously the spotlights behind will be being removed, but I'm still using those, so I don't want to remove those just yet. I think that looks good, but yeah, could do with possibly coming down a little bit. I do need to be careful of the wind noise through the gap underneath. So we've got about 3 centimetres below that. So what I might do is alter the design slightly to bring this more out like that, so that the bolt is a little bit lower, probably about 2 centimetres lower, so that there's a 1 centimetre gap between the light bar and the roof of the car. But it's a start. It's starting to get dark now, so I'm going to leave this for today, and then I'll alter the design on the brackets and make some slightly different ones, and then fit them to the car, and that should be good to go. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so here we can see the slightly modified bracket with the light bar. The clearance between the light bar and the roof is a lot smaller now. We've got about 2 centimetres there. bracket is, this part is slightly lower, and it's also slightly longer, so there's a very small amount of clearance there between the light bar and this piece here that sort of sticks out. So I'm happy with that design. That seems to fit correctly. The distance between the brackets is also correct. So what I need to do now is 3D print another one of these, well, another two, one for each end, and create a silicone mold. Okay, that's the next thing to do, and then we should be able to cast the final brackets in polyurethane. So here we can see the silicone molds. So I made these by gluing the 3D printed brackets into the bottom of a couple of plastic boxes and then pouring in a silicone rubber. So it's a silicone model making casting rubber which you mix up and pour in, making sure there were no trapped air bubbles underneath the sort of the overhangs. The bottles that you can see in the picture were purely to reduce the amount of silicone I use. Also makes a sort of something to hold on to actually make it a little bit easier to get the silicone out of the box once it's cured. So I did have to cut the mold slightly to allow the piece that was underneath there to come out. I was hoping it would just wriggle out, but I think the honeycomb pattern on it was sort of jamming it tight, so I had to very carefully cut with the knife. But that will close up nicely once I pour in the polyurethane. The worst that will happen there is we'll just get a little ultra thin whisker of polyurethane attached to the item, which can then be trimmed off with a knife. That cut there will make it a lot easier to get the finished item out again at the end once it's cured as well. So there are the two molds, identical molds, left and right side. What I'm going to do now is pour in some polyurethane casting resin. This is a strong hard polyurethane. It's not a rubber, it's a sort of a plastic, a resin that sets to a solid plastic. So safety first, got my goggles, my mask, gloves, some scales to weigh out the quantities I need. I've also got some pots and mixing sticks here, and this bottle here is the black pigment that I'll put in just to colour it black, because what you do is you mix these two parts in equal measure. If you don't add any pigment, you just end up with a sort of kind of cream coloured, neutral coloured plastic, which well, it's basically sort of this kind of colour, which is not very nice looking. So put in some black pigment. These items are going to go on the roof with the roof rails, so I don't really want them bright coloured. You can colour them red, blue, yellow, whatever colour you want, but I'm going to do them black. Okay, so I'm going to get my gear on, mix up some of that polyurethane. It's 10 to 1, so it's 1 to 1 with these two, and then 10% pigment. Okay, so I'll probably start off by doing, say, 10 grams of this and 100 each of the part A and part B, and then I'll pour that very carefully into these two molds and let that cure. It takes a couple of hours to go fully hard, and then I'll pull out the resulting object and see what it looks like. Okay, so I've demoulded the polyurethane now. A little bit difficult getting these out of the moulds, but luckily with that little cut there it allowed me to pull that back a bit and get the item out. This side looks brilliant, really good. Unfortunately on the back, the bit that was down in here, hidden away, obviously had some trapped air. You can see there's a sort of a bit like where there's been an air bubble. So what I did was had another go, immediately cast some more, and these ones have come out better. So what I did is on these ones I just poured the polyurethane, just tipped it a little bit so that any air came out before then filling the rest of it up. I'm still not totally happy with the finish there. I mean, it is a sort of rough 3D printed finish, but you can see where the microscopic air bubbles have sort of ended up sitting against the upper surface. So what I'm going to try next is actually tipping this up a bit, pouring in the polyurethane and just letting it kind of come to here, allowing any air to come to the surface, any gas, bubbles, whatever's down in there. And then when it's almost set, I'll level out the mould and pour the rest. Hopefully the joint between the two castings won't become a weak spot. If the polyurethane's still not quite, if it's still slightly soft, not fully cured, then the next pour should chemically bond to that with no loss of strength. I'll try that now and we'll see what sort of result we get. If that doesn't work, I'm going to have to completely rethink the mould, maybe go to a sort of a two-part mould, possibly that way round, with sort of two halves clamped together, which I can then separate out. Okay, that's a lot better. This bit here is just a little whiskery bit that we get due to the split there that I had to make. So that just brushes off. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So it's a rough finish, but the 3D printed item had a rough finish on that side because of the support. When I printed this, the 3D printer had to add a support structure underneath there because that's an overhang. You can't print in mid-air. So where the support plastic touched the main item, it does leave a bit of a rough finish. That's okay though, because when that's fitted to the car, the light bar is right next to that, so you won't really see it. This side here, that's the top surface of the casting, nice and shiny. And then that side, the side that you do see when it's fitted, is exactly the same as the 3D print. Okay, so you can actually see the lines of the printer. Okay, that one's come out very well. Just compare the two. There we go, no air bubbles. That looks good. Yep, that's fine. So where I've cast that in two parts, the joint was around here. You can't actually see that at all. Can't see it on this one either. So that would have been here somewhere. Okay, good. Right, let's get these fitted to the car. Okay, so now I'm going to try and fit these new brackets to the car. I need to remove the old lights and bar at some point very soon. First I'm going to try and drill these. So I will get those into position like so. I'll mark them up and drill them, and then bolt them in, and then lift out the old lights, disconnect them. Okay, so I've now drilled the holes that I've marked, and also that hole there at the end. Okay, there's one of the brackets bolted in with some stainless steel Allen head bolts with washers underneath, and then under the other side there's some nylock nuts with washers underneath them, all stainless steel so that it doesn't rust. And that one's there. Now I need to do the other side. Okay, that's the other side on. I'm now going to remove these lights and then fit the light bar between the brackets. Right, that's the old lights loosened off. Put this towel underneath them to stop scratching the roof. I've got to try and wiggle them out somehow now. Okay. Right, that's the old lights off. See here, this powder where the aluminium has reacted with the steel. I was actually earthing through these as well, and every time I went on main beam I got a lot of interference on the radio because of this poor electrical joint, just not flowing a lot of electricity very well, making a lot of interference, especially when it was wet. There was all sorts of crackling noises on the radio. So what I'll do when I fit the new light bar in, when I come to wire it up, I'll actually make sure that the earth connection is a nice, proper, decent earth. Right, next thing to do, offer up the new light bar and get these bolts in and see what it looks like. So here is the kit that came with the light bar. We've got brackets there for mounting directly to the roof of the vehicle, not going to be using those, and some kind of horrendous wiring kit here with oddly 2 relays on it and quite a nice little control panel. Yeah, fuses, quite a comprehensive wiring kit there with all sorts of connectors and everything. Looks very well made. And I'm surprised actually that a sort of 70 quid light bar came with a kit like that. I'm not going to be using any of that, so I shall put that aside and may possibly salvage some of that, salvage the relays or something for another project. But this is what I'm after, which is the bolts. Now, I don't know if these are stainless steel. They look like chrome plated. They're very shiny. Stainless is not usually that shiny actually. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can tell from the markings. I think what I'll do is I'll put these bolts in and keep an eye on them. And if they start to rust, I'll swap them with stainless ones. I don't know what these longer ones are for. Possibly different brackets or something, but it's the small ones that I want to use. Get those out. And there's a couple of nuts as well, but I don't think I need the nuts. It just doesn't really look enough. I was expecting some washers or something. These just don't actually really look substantial enough to go in the end of what is quite a heavy light bar. Yeah, okay, might add a couple of washers or shake-proof washers or something just to stop these, because if these come loose and fall out, that's it, the light bar comes crashing off the car. It's also, from a security point of view, very, very easy for somebody to undo these and steal the light bar. I mean, one of my neighbours had a light bar on his Discovery, and somebody came in the night and ripped it off. So might actually look at some sort of anti-theft bolts or Torx head bolts or something like that. These just look a bit insufficient, really. Okay, right, well, I'll offer up the light bar and we'll see what it looks like with it bolted in. Right, I've got a bit of a problem here. This is not lining up properly. When I push that in, that is hitting the bracket. Now, I did actually modify the bracket to allow for that. The other side has gone in okay. So, not totally sure what is going on here. I might loosen these very slightly. Just see if that helps that fit in. Okay, it's in. I'm going to add some washers under these bolts here. There's a strange issue. This is incredibly close here, and it's fouling very slightly. One advantage of that is it does hold the light bar solid. I mean, it's so long it can actually twist down its length. So that is in and that's solid. I need to retighten these. I'm not totally happy with the fit of these brackets. Actually, these are I have to put these in quite tight. That's touching, and this whole bracket is being bent inwards slightly. So what I'll do is revisit the design. This will do for now, but longer term I think we need, well, maybe I just need to re-drill these holes very slightly. Just maybe drill them out with an 8mm drill and just see if that fits a little bit better. Yeah, I think I'll do that now actually, because I'm not too happy with that. That's tight, but it's bending the bracket a bit. Don't want them to snap or fatigue through. Okay, I'm gonna undo these. Just re-drill those holes a little bit bigger. Okay, things aren't going very well. I've got the other end in, but this is just not fitting. It's just not lining up. What's happening is the back of that is hitting here, and it's put so much strain on that bolt that it's actually ripped the thread in the end of the hole on the light bar, which is a bit of a disaster. I don't think it's ripped the whole thread, but certainly the first few rings of thread there have been ripped. So I'm not gonna reinsert that bolt until I've addressed this clearance issue, because even enlarging the holes up to 8mm, things still aren't lining up. So what I need to do is I need to kind of grind here or do something, or just go completely back to the drawing board and make these brackets longer. I'm going to try and see if I can remove a little bit of material here right in the middle, just here. That's all it needs, is a little bit just to clear that bit there. You can see where it's rubbed. Okay, it just needs a couple of millimeters and then everything will line up. Until then, I'm gonna have to try and carefully rest that there. I think I'll have to take this back off now. What a pain. Annoying. But it's a bit trial and error, these things. We'll get there in the end. What I've done now is just use my Dremel tool to grind a bit out of that. It might need more. I'm just going to offer that up and see if that is enough to clear the rear of the light bar. Okay, I've realised now what's going on. Right, I've put in a slightly longer bolt there just to make sure that the thread was fully engaged after I ripped the first few spirals of thread. So that bolt now is going right to the back. That is clearing just about there, just about. But the problem was actually caused by me drilling the original holes in slightly the wrong place. Well, one of them anyway. This one is in and located, and you can see with that there and that all nice and tight, that hole slightly in the wrong place. So what it was doing was pulling the light bar brackets inwards, and I was then having to bend them out, and that's why nothing was lining up. So just a note for next time I do anything like this is assemble it all loosely before drilling the final holes, and just make sure that everything kind of goes together roughly right. Maybe drill smaller holes to start with, and just check the alignment. So what I'm going to do is just get the drill, run it through that hole, through the bracket as well, just so that it's definitely able to bolt together tightly. And then I'll do the other side. I will make this little cutout on the other side as well. It's not gone all the way through, it's just a couple of millimeters, just a little recess, just to allow the back of the light bar just to clear the bracket there. I don't think that's going to weaken it at all. So I'll do that on the other side, get this all tightened up, and then step back and see what it looks like. And then I need to think about wiring up. Right, that's finally on. That bolt is tight. This is gripping nicely in there against the sort of teeth on the end there to stop that rotating. These are done up tight, and there's a little tiny bit of clearance there. Okay, so I've made that recess on that one as well. A couple of millimeters clearance. That is in. The towel can now come out, and we can step back and have a look at that. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so the next thing to do is to wire up the light bar. Now, you'll notice that the wire is at this end. Have I fitted it upside down? Well, sort of. I've put it upside down compared to how I had it the other day. Okay, but the reason I've put it this way round is the wire comes out the bottom here, and I wasn't happy with it being on top at the other end. I was just a bit worried that rain might get in, water might get in. So with the wire underneath, it should keep it a little bit more weatherproof. It does mean that I'm going to need to run this all the way to the other end, either that or I need to take this down here and then across the engine bay, because the relay's over near the battery on the other side. So I haven't decided yet which way I'm going to do that. Right, I now need to have a think about wiring the light bar up. Here is the cable that comes with it, which goes in just under here. I've put the light bar this way round with the wire at this end so that the cable grommet is tucked away underneath out of the rain. That's a little bit annoying that it's that way round, because I've already got a wire on the other side. So if we walk round to the other side, we've got a relay and a wire that goes up here. It's the black wire, or one of these black wires that goes up here. This wire here, the thicker one. The thinner one is for my rear amber lights, amber strobe lights. So the thicker wire there goes up underneath this seal. See, there's a rubber lip on the edge of the windscreen there, and you can just run a wire up underneath it in the gutter and then up here. Now that is the bullet connector socket which was connected to the old spotlights. So I have a choice. I can either run a wire all the way across the light bar to the other side, or I can route the wire from the relay across somehow, possibly underneath the scuttle panel, across through here, and do exactly the same on this side of the windscreen, up here to here, which I think would be a lot neater. That would be a much better way to do it. Okay, this lamp is rated 240 watts. I mean, it's a little bit strange when you look at the eBay listing because it says 240 watts, 10 amps. Well, it would be 10 amps if you ran it at 24 volts, but this is 12 volts. If it's 240 watts at 12 volts, that's 20 amps, okay? Now this cable here looks fairly thick. It's not super thick. So it's going to be between 10 and 20 amps. I've got some 17 amp red cable here. I don't have any black in 17 amp. I've got some 5 amp black, which is definitely too low current rating. So red it is. I wanted to use black really, just so that it was darker, but it is going to be tucked under this seal, so you won't see it. And then when it comes up here, I can sort of tuck it round here. The earth connection needs a bit of thought as well. On the other side, I was actually earthing the spotlight to the bit of angle aluminium that went all the way across, and then where the bolts went in here, in particular the one on the other side, there was a lot of oxide, a lot of white powder, where the steel washer had reacted with the aluminium casting of this foot, coupled with the high current electricity flowing through it. It just sort of really didn't make a very good connection, and every time I went on main beam, the radio signal got completely obliterated. It was just white noise on the radio, which was quite annoying. So I need to have a bit of a think about the earth connection here, the ground connection, 0 volts. That could be earthed to this. I don't really want to drill in, I don't want to earth it into this aluminium here. I'd rather not take it through this aluminium at all, because every time you have a joint between the steel bolt and the aluminium, then you're going to get problems. This bolt here goes down into the steel bodywork of the car, so if I put a large eyelet underneath that, then the earth goes straight down, it doesn't go through this at all. So I think that's probably the best thing to do. Now I might need to drill a little hole in here and bring the wire in through the back here. I'm not sure if it can actually sort of tuck round. I might be able to actually could probably tuck round in there actually. There's a little bit of a groove there. I don't want to bring it sort of over here because it's going to stop the cover from clicking down properly. So if I have to drill a hole at the back to bring this wire through, or even just the inner black core of that, then so be it, that's fine, I can do that. The red wire, happy just to bring that down, and then got quite a lot of it on this roll here, not that much actually, enough to get across to the other side. So I think what I will do is undo the 5 screws that secure the front of the scuttle panel. I'm not going to bother taking the wiper arms off and removing the scuttle completely. I'm just going to lift the front of it up just enough for me to tuck a wire across over to the battery, where the relay is and get that connected up, and then we can go for a drive and see how bright the light bar is. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I've just removed these screws here, lifting this, just tucking this wire in underneath. Can't really see that very easily, but it's, you can see this metal lip here, so I'm just going the other side of that. There's no moving parts or anything in there. So I'll just run that along, tuck that over there, out of the way. Oh, it's very fiddly. Right, I'll use both hands to do that and run that along to the relay. Okay, so what I've done here is to bring the cable from the light bar in at the back through a hole, and then earthed it underneath this bolt, and then the red wire is just joined to the one that comes up from the engine bay. I've ground out a bit of the aluminium there just to allow that to sit flush. I've also cut a little bit of the foot mounting rubber away there just to allow that to sit in and not prevent the cover from going on. Okay, so that cover is now clipped on properly. Got the wire coming out of there, but it's not being trapped. You see, it's got its own little space to come out. At some point in the future I might replace this wire with black one, or just put some black sealant or something in here, or some black tape over that. It's a shame actually that I only had red cable in the right thickness, but there it is. The wire comes down, you can just see it there, down there, underneath this seal, all the way down, and then you can just about see it there. Tucks under there, round here. You can just see it there, going along underneath the scuttle panel, and then it comes out here. Okay, so that's just tucked along the back there, and then connected up to the existing relay that ran the roof lights before the spotlights that I had fitted. I'll just quickly show you how I've wired up the relay here. Okay, so that relay takes a positive feed with a fuse in here. Let's see if I can open that up. With a 25 amp fuse in there. The light bar is meant to draw about 20 amps, so I've gone for a 25 amp fuse. That then feeds the relay here. Now I'll put a circuit diagram with the pin out at the end of this video. The relay coil has a negative wire attached to it, which is this one. That red wire here is the one that goes off up to the roof, to the lights, and then the trigger wire, which is this blue wire, this one here, actually goes all the way down and connects in just down there. It's very difficult to see. It's actually connected in to this wire here, which is the one. It's a bundle of wires with tape around them, which goes to the back of the headlight. Okay, so that's the headlight connector there. The wire that you want to connect into is yellow with an orange stripe. Okay, so it's a big thick wire, yellow with an orange stripe. That is the main beam wire. So when the main beam lights come on, main beam bulbs come on, that wire goes to 12 volts. That then triggers the relay and puts on the roof lights, puts on the light bar on the roof. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is turn the car around and switch this on and just see how bright it is and see how it compares to dip beam. Okay, I'm going to do a quick comparison now. So that is dip beam, so that's Philips Diamond Vision dip beam bulbs. Main beam, they're LED main beams. And now I'm going to engage the light bar. You can see there it's a big difference. That's really, really bright. Okay, so I'm going to come off the lights now. And so if I flash, that's dip beam. And then with the light bar, very, very bright. Okay, so I'm going to start the engine now and then hop out and show what it looks like from outside. Wow, incredibly bright. Okay, very, very, very bright. This is hurting my eyes. Quite a good angle, field of view actually on the light. So here we've got Philips Diamond Vision LED main beam bulbs, H7 LEDs, and then we've got the light bar. So you can get a feeling of the difference in brightness there. I mean, my phone is completely overexposed with that, so yeah. Very, very bright. I'll go for a drive tomorrow and see what it looks like while driving. Beam, main beam, and with the light bar as well. Okay, so that's the light bar fitted and wired up. You can see the wire here. I can cover that with a bit of black tape. There it is. Nicely on there, the brackets. Now what I'll do now is go inside and use my whiteboard to sketch out the circuit diagram of how I wired up the light bar with the relay. We can also look at the legal side of using a light bar like this. Do you need an isolator switch? Will it pass the MOT? Are you likely to get pulled over by the police? These are probably questions that you're asking yourself when you're thinking of fitting something like this. Is it actually legal? So let's have a quick look now at the legal side of running additional main beam spotlights or light bars, be they mounted on the grille, on the front of the car or on the roof. This website here, the Legislation Gov UK website, is very useful for information on the UK laws. The laws where you are may differ, okay, so please do check them before you fit additional lights to your car. The particular part of the legislation that we're going to look at today is the Road Vehicle Lighting Regulations 1989. And this website actually shows lots and lots of information about the regulations, about all sorts of different lights. You can have a look down here and find out what the law is regarding all the other lights on your vehicle, extra reverse lights, warning beacons, etc., etc. Now, the bit that we're interested in here is this bit, section 5 or schedule 5, which is main beam headlights. What we can do here is have a look down what the requirements are for main beam headlights and see if the light bar that I fitted meets these requirements. So just going down this list here, we can see that the number of main beam bulbs, or the number of main beam lights, is 2. That's actually the minimum number on a car. Okay, it's not a motorbike. A motorbike would be 1, or a vehicle with 3 wheels. This is a vehicle used after 1972, so the minimum number of main beam bulbs required is 2. The position, there's no requirement. Longitudinal. The vertical positioning, there's no requirement, so it's okay to put them on the roof. Okay, some people say they have to be on the front of the car. Well, there's no requirement that they have to be a certain height off the ground, so they can be on the roof. The angle of visibility, no requirement. The alignment does need to be to the front. Fair enough, yeah. You would not put main beam bulbs on a car pointing to the sides or to the back. They do need to be approved or have a British standard mark. The size of the illuminated area, no requirement. The colour needs to be white or yellow. My roof light bar is white. Now this is where we get to the interesting part. This section here, section 8 and 9, talk about wattage and intensity. So the wattage on a vehicle first used after April 1986, there's no requirement. And the intensity, no requirement. This is important because some people say, oh, light bars are too bright, or LED bulbs are too bright. For main beam, they're okay because there's no requirement on the maximum wattage or the maximum intensity. Dip beam is a whole nother story. Dip beam is different. Don't run LED bulbs in your dip beam. You will fail the MOT, certainly in the UK. The beam pattern will be wrong, the colour will be wrong, the intensity will be wrong. But for main beam, there's no requirement to have a maximum wattage or a maximum intensity. Electrical connection here, it says that the main beam bulbs must extinguish when you dip the lights. So that may be a mechanical or an electrical dip switch that turns off the bulbs or causes the beam to be dipped. Okay. Do you need a telltale light, the blue light on your dashboard that comes on? That's fine. And then we have other requirements here about approval markings. Part 2 here relates to the optional main beam headlights. So these are additional spotlights, light bars, roof lights, lights on the front of the car, on the grille, on the front bumper, extra driving lights that come on only with main beam. This is the section that my light bar on my roof falls into. So let's have a look and see what it says here. So any part that may be fitted, and the only requirement, any number may be fitted. So let's have a look at these requirements. Any number may be fitted. So any number of lights may be fitted, and the only requirements prescribed with these regulations in respect of any which are fitted are those specified in paragraphs 7, 10, 12a of part 1. So let's have a quick look at those. Paragraph 7. Colour, white or yellow. Okay, we're all right on that. They're white. 10 and 12a. 10, electrical connections. Do they go off when you dip the headlights? Yes. My roof light bar does go off when I dip the headlights. And 12a, every main beam headlamp shall be so constructed that the direction of the beam of light emitted therefrom can be adjusted while the vehicle is stationary. Well, my light bar can be adjusted. It's just a case of loosening off those bolts on the end and adjusting the angle of the beam. That's part 1. And in the case of a motor vehicle first used on or after the 1st of April 1991, paragraph 5 of part 1. So paragraph 5. Let's have a quick look. Remind ourselves what paragraph 5 is. Now, paragraph 5 is the requirement that the lights have an approval mark or a British standard mark. This really is where LED bulbs and LED lights fall down. Many bulbs that you can buy online on eBay and Amazon do not have a CE marking. They do not have a BS, British Standard marking. My light bar does have a CE mark, and the spotlights that I had on the roof before do have a CE marking. Okay, so that's a certificate of the electrical conformity. It's a European certificate of electrical safety and conformity to the regulations. Be aware that a lot of items which are exported from China carry a CE marking, but it's not the European CE mark. This is a China export CE mark. It looks almost identical to the European standard marking. It's just the spacing between the C and the E is slightly different. So long as your main beam spotlights or light bar or LED bulbs that you may be fitting into your main beam headlamp units are CE marked or BS, British Standard marked, then they are legal. Nowhere in these regulations does it say that you need a switch to enable the roof lights or to enable the extra spotlights. There's nothing in here about having an isolator switch. Okay, so if you do fit extra spotlights or an extra roof light bar and you get pulled over by the police for whatever reason, or you fail your MOT, do refer whoever it is to these regulations. There's nothing in here about having a switch. That said, I would recommend fitting an isolator switch, because there are times where you don't want the roof lights to come on, or you don't want the extra spotlight to come on. In snow or heavy rain, the extra brightness of the lights can actually dazzle you while you're driving, and there may be times where you want to run purely on normal main beam. Okay, so I fitted a switch on mine so that I can turn the roof lights off if I want to, but by law I don't have to have that switch. When I went for an MOT with my previous spotlights a few years ago, my MOT tester at first said, oh, it's a fail because it hasn't got a switch, but then he looked up the rules and he passed it. You don't have to have a switch, but I would recommend fitting one. So I hope that has been useful, and I hope that that has clarified the legal side of the regulations. Okay, so that's the end of the video. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.